but what is Juneteenth? And when I started learning more about it, when I started interacting with the vendors, when I started interacting with my fellow speakers on that day, I realized that Juneteenth was something that we all, as Americans, need to be aware of, need to take a pause and honor and celebrate. Fortunately, as of last year, in New York State, as well as various other states in the Union, have begun celebrating it as an official state holiday. And currently, I don't know what he's got going on today, but currently, Juneteenth is being signed into law as a federal holiday. Well, it's not being signed into law as a federal holiday. It's a bill going to Congress. So I just wanted to know that today we are gathering to take part into a tradition. I feel like there's a metaphorical symbol that can assist us in understanding why we're here. And that is a symbol of Sankofa. Sankofa, out of Ghana, out of the Akan people, meaning to return, engage, and bring it here. So we celebrate, we observe, we remember, so that we can look back, receive the knowledge, bring it here, and utilize it forward. And just as this bird is taking this egg on its back and bringing it forward, my hope and my encouragement is that as we gather today, we receive knowledge that we can take and move forward as well. I encourage us now to take a brief pause, to just arrive, as I said earlier, into the space and to be here with each other. We aren't able to meet in person, but we are able to connect. And this event is coming to you out of the Department of Student Involvement. I have some of my colleagues here with me today. And we have a number of speakers, phenomenal keynote speaker to assist us as we observe this day, as we look back, stand in the knowledge so that we can bring it forward. A mentor of mine once told me, like, you need to know where you were in order to know where you are, so you have a strong understanding of where you're going. And I want to let everyone know the Department of Student Involvement's multicultural experiences are designed to serve as inclusive spaces where WCC students and community members can learn, express aspects of their lived experiences, further enhance their sense of community, and challenge themselves while learning from the honest experiences of others. I'd also like to let everyone know that though this event is taking place virtually, we acknowledge that the college sits on the ancestral lands of the Siwanoy people of the Wapajir Confederacy. We'd now like to take this moment of pause to honor this people and their land. If you'd like to learn more about the original peoples of this land, please contact us at the Department of Student Involvement for additional resources, and we'd be glad to share them with you. So as we move forward in today's experience, I'm going to now pass the unmuting, I wouldn't say the mic, but the unmuting to Dr. Rachel Hall, who will lead us through a centering and libation ceremony. A centering and libation ceremony is an opportunity for us to take a moment of silence and honor those that have transcended, those that have been taken from us. Dr. Rachel, I'll pass it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings. Peoples of the African diaspora emphasize the importance of honoring one community, its elders, and those who have transitioned. With this ceremony, we take time to honor all three. An African proverb tells us the people who lack the knowledge of their past are like a tree without roots. In some spaces, when a member of a community is asked, "Who are you?" the answer is, "I am we." This is why we are here today, to honor the truths of our past, to acknowledge the realities of today, and to share the torch of wisdom that has been so graciously passed on generation after generation. So in this spirit of remembrance, we pour this libation. We pour to honor the past so that we may learn from it. We pour to honor the importance of community, cohesion, and unity. We use cool water to freshen the road our ancestors and brethren traveled to virtually connect here in both memory and or spirit. We use cool water as a symbol of the community, of the continuity of life, to purify and to nourish our souls. We pour to celebrate the coming together of all that are here, both seen and unseen. During this time, we call upon our ancestors, our mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers, our fathers, grandfathers, and our great-grandfathers, uncles, aunts, and cousins, the foundations of our families immortalized in our hearts. We call upon our elders, whose wisdoms we seek in all endeavors, our friends whom we are blessed to have in our lives, our parents who guided us along the road to adulthood, our community members that create, hold, and clear space for us to share the gifts that once were shared with us. We call upon the loved ones who have passed over and could not be here today, loved ones that have been unjustly taken from us, and loved ones that have been lost to the ravages of illusion. We ask they be with us in our thoughts. For the next few moments, I'm going to set up the system so that you can unmute yourselves. In our effort to remember and honor, I ask that if anyone would like to speak the names of someone we've lost in the space, please unmute yourself and do so. Each time I hear a name, I will pour this life-giving water so as to honor the life the individual lived and shared with us.
My sister, Jocelyn Lane.
My late wife, Jane Beaver Wilson.
Emmett Till.
My late husband, Keith Miles. My mother, Lourdes Spando.
My friend, Echo Amsa.
Dr. Margaret Wade Lewis.
My grandmother, Pamela Spencer.
Dr. Martin Luther King.
George
My
Floyd.
grandma, Verona Farrell.
My grandmother, Reverend Saritha Johnson.
My grandmothers, Susie Hatter Jackson and Ella Ruffin.
Candido Piñeiro and Cruz Moyet.
My sister, Jasmine Camillo.
Elizabeth Reimer.
Harriet Tubman.
My son, Brandon Charleston.
My parents, Leroy and Mary Louise Wilson.
Thank you. Therefore, we cast our libations to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. We wish for everyone to be fully present in our time of growth and solidarity. And may we all leave more blessed than when we arrived. Ashe and Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel Hall, for offering libation ceremony for everyone. Every group of people, every institution requires a leader. We have today with us our leader, the president of the college, president of Westchester Community College, Dr. Belinda S. Miles. Dr. Miles, you may unmute yourself and deliver some opening remarks for us.
Thank you. I was waiting for permission, and I appreciate the extra moment to collect myself. It was such a moving ceremony. Thank you, Dr. Hall. Thank you, Director Pinheiro, for facilitating the program in such a wonderful manner that helps to connect us to those who came before us, because we do stand on the legacy and the promise of those who came before us and the perils of those who came before us. We don't exist in a vacuum. And so good morning to everyone and welcome. Welcome to our guests, our speakers, our students, members of our faculty and staff, and any others who have gathered with us today for this. There's a solemnity in our Juneteenth celebration, but it is a celebration. And so thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to be here with you as we explore this year's theme, remembering the past and igniting the future. And just to spend a moment or two to talk about how we move forward today. And certainly we do remember and honor our ancestors and the tireless commitment of those who came before us to confront racism in every form and to create a just and equitable society where all members thrive and have an opportunity to achieve. Those basic tenets are really critical to the work that we do every day at Westchester Community College. We are an access institution. We welcome, our doors are open. We welcome individuals to come here and be themselves, to discover themselves, to become, and to prepare to thrive and be able to achieve. And so our past is connected to our present, and actually the challenges that were faced by our ancestors in the past really do inform much of what we're doing today. We get to look at measures of progress over time to see where we are, but we can also learn from their struggles and their triumphs as we face current horrors in our experience personally and societally. We're facing still a global pandemic. We are facing incidents of increasing racism and violence in our society against people of color. And these have all reignited already the movement toward more equity and opportunity for all. And we are in that ecosystem. We have a role to play. So I appreciate the proactive nature of today's program. And so for many of the events that we're facing in our society have also resulted in an enlightenment, a desire to learn more, a desire to question what's happening around us. Are we truly the people of the land of the free? What does it mean to be one nation, indivisible? Can we achieve those ideals? And how do we remember the past when there are so many different perspectives and viewpoints and be united around a common vision for the future? So we ask ourselves in this context, who is actually controlling the narrative here? And what information do we need in order to move forward? Who's shaping and interpreting the information that we receive? And when do we even get it? That's the essence of Juneteenth, that people didn't get the information until 2 years later. And so good thing they got the right information and they understood that freedom was the reality and they were able to commence with moving forward in that free state. So programs like this give us an opportunity to learn, to explore new ideas, to better understand the world around us, to look at the past and begin to shape our own future. And in the process at Westchester Community College, we pride ourselves on offering a curriculum and an extracurricular program that develops your critical thinking skills so that you can assess the information and also assess it in the context of the reality that you face on a daily basis. You can also begin to make plans for what kinds of contributions you want to make to this society, to this environment while you're a student and beyond, to improve the status of all of us. And so I'll just end by sharing a simple quote from an American educator, Robert Maynard Hutchins, who said the object of education is to prepare, he says, the young, and I consider myself in that group. We're young at heart, we're still learning, we have a growth mindset, but to educate the young, to educate themselves throughout their lives. So this is a lifelong iteration. We are finding that there's increased awareness only lately, and we're anticipating more support for this holiday. And so thank you for being a part of this growth mindset as we're continuously learning together and sharing and improving our status and our society through this enlightenment. So thank you for the opportunity to offer a few remarks, and happy Juneteenth.
Thank you so much for your words, Dr. Miles. Everyone, I said earlier that every group, every gathering of people, every institution needs a leader. You heard from our leader, Dr. Miles. Every group, gathering, institution also needs leaders that have different focuses. We have the spiritual leaders, the educational leaders. Next, we'll hear from our diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, the individual that assists us in reaching the mission that we set for ourselves as an institution as we move further into the world and society as a united people, Dr. Renardo Reddick.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here to celebrate our the Juneteenth celebration. I want to say thank you, Dr. Miles and Juan Carlos and Dr. Rachel Hall for making sure that this program is put together today. So special thank you to all of you and all those who helped. So as I think about the theme of our celebration this year, I can't help but to think about our past. And so, for example, my mom attended segregated schools, rode segregated buses, and can remember being forced to use water fountains labeled colored only. My mom remembers seeing and hearing stories of how our elders were intimidated to not vote, some even losing their jobs when they had the courage to do so. My mom witnessed the Klan proudly walking down the local streets. Too much fanfare and fear from Black and brown people. There were rampant stories that instilled fear about the KKK and how ingrained they were in our community. My mom was born and raised in an era where she was not afforded the same opportunities as others because of the color of her skin. Now, let's just think about this for a moment, as my mom is only in her early 60s, pretty young. So in 60 years, have things changed very much? Sometimes I wonder. As a community, we elected our first woman vice president, who is also Black and South Asian. This happened because we strategized and mobilized as community and nation to speak our truth of what the foundation of our country is, the ability to embrace and celebrate diversity. However, I say this is just a starting point. This week, the Senate voted to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. This is great, but in my mind, it's just a start and more must be required. You see, although this is significant, where is the moral obligation of our elected officials to ensure that the right to vote is a basic right and not something that is constantly under assault? Where is the courage to stop this assault? Where is the courage to mend the years of income inequality of our Black and brown communities? Where is the courage to systematically support the growth and development of Black and brown entrepreneurship and innovation? Where is the courage to ensure that our Black and brown communities are not discriminated against when looking for housing, seeking employment, driving to visit their family across town, or just simply trying to buy a snack at the corner store? Think about those. Where's the courage? I'd like to affirm that WCC's commitment to ensuring that all of our community members are valued and have a seat at the table. We must demand equitable resources, laws, and engagement to root out systems of oppression that continue to create barriers to the success of our communities. I ask that you have the courage to consider in what ways could you support this, and how can you use your voice to help others in your local community and here at WCC? Where does the courage lie? I want to say thank you to all of you for being here today, because that takes courage. Juneteenth celebration, 2 years after that took courage. We have a lot more to do. We're just at the beginning. Thank you again for being here. And now I'll turn this back over to Dr. Rachel Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Reddick. We appreciate your words and your poignant statements on being honest and truthful and authentic of where we truly are. Next, we will hear the Black National Anthem sung, but before we do, I'd like to share a very short video that tells us a little bit more about the Black National Anthem, where it came from, and why it is that we sing it.
There's been a lot of talk about the national anthem lately, for better or for worse. But for African Americans, there's a national anthem that goes way back and tells our American story of struggle, triumph, and freedom.
It's a part of me, it's a part of history.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring.
It's called Lift Every Voice and Sing.
I heard it actually going to my grandma's church. I went to Spelman, so they were singing before sporting events.
Wasn't it an old slave song?
Lift Every Voice and Sing actually started as a poem. It was first recited in the year 1900 by 500 school children at the all-black Stanton School in Jacksonville, Florida, as a tribute to President Abraham Lincoln's birthday. The creator of Lift Every Voice and Sing was James Weldon Johnson, a civil rights activist, lawyer, and school principal, who also wrote the poem to introduce Booker T. Washington, who was visiting his school. Johnson's brother, John Rosamond Johnson, put the poem to music, and it officially became a song. Once the NAACP adopted Lift Every Voice and Sing as its official Negro national anthem, the song took on a life of its own. A remake of Lift Every Voice and Sing was done in the 1990s by Melba Moore with fellow R&B artists like Stevie Wonder, Anita Baker, Dionne Warwick, and Bobby Brown. It was even recited during President Barack Obama's first presidential inauguration. Wherever you stand on what to actually call Lift Every Voice and Sing, chances are you fall into the bucket of people who just remember the first stanza.
Lift every voice and sing to where Lift every voice and sing till
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise.
high as the listening skies.
As it resounds as the rolling sea.
Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Is won.
Beyond the politics around Lift Every Voice and Sing, the song itself is powerful in that it talks about staying hopeful, fighting injustice, and knowing the struggle our ancestors endured.
It's a part of something that gave people hope and, striving for excellence and kind of sense of community.
Just knowing that you have a, what do you want to call that, a place, knowing that you're an individual, you're a citizen, you are here, and there's power in that.
The last statement that we heard in that video is "you are here," and there's power in that statement. And I want to let everyone know that through the power of Zoom technology, Risa Graves is here, and Risa Graves will be leading us in the song of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Thank you, Risa Graves, for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn has died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy light led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you so very much, Risa Graves. Ladies and gentlemen, all on the call, everyone, he, she, they, I'd just like to take a moment, and I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves because we were just blessed. We were just blessed with those words and that heart. If we could just take a moment, unmute yourselves, and give us an applause for Risa Graves. That was phenomenal.
Beautiful voice.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yes, she has a beautiful voice. I enjoyed the
So
singing.
moving, so moving.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing some love and blessing Risa, just as Risa has blessed up. Next up, we have our keynote speaker, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamini. Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamini is the best-selling author of Honoring Professor William Leo Hansberry, 1894 to 1965, an intellectual libation for the architect of America's African Studies Department, and recognized as an internationally acclaimed Pan-African historian. He is also the star expert of the Hidden Colors documentary series, as well as the narrator of the international hit film Out of Darkness. As an educator, consultant, curriculum, and community developer, Professor Kamini is also the principal facilitator and chief executive officer of the African-centered Science Academy named per Ankh temple/house of life. Professor Kaba Kamini is also a mentor of mine and has served and granted wisdom so many young people over the years. I speak with many students of his to this day, and we say, remember Kaba? We learned that from Kaba. To this day, I end my classes when I teach psychology classes or other courses with, did you believe everything I said? If you did, there's something wrong because you need to look it up for yourself. And that is a gem of wisdom that Professor Kaba Kamini shared with me. I now like to ask Professor Kaba Kamini to unmute himself so that we can hear his keynote speech. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much to my brother, my student Juan Carlos. Buenos dias, bonjour, and in Kemet we would say Hotep, which means peace. I would like to thank Dr. Hall for all the work that she did to make this happen, and to all of the staff of Westchester Community College. I'm not far from you. I'm in the Bronx, so I've passed you on several occasions. And my background, although I've taught college for 14 years, my background here in New York City is as a Board of Ed teacher. I've taught every grade, I've taught every class, including high school. And one of the things I've always tried to impart to our students, to those that I've come in contact with, just very simply, is what does it mean to you? There is a Moorish proverb that says, if what you've learned you can't use, you wasted your time learning it. And so everything that we learn is applicable. And as I look at Juneteenth Day, what it represents, Emancipation Day, it was called Jubilee. There were many names for it, but there's a fundamental principle that we can walk away with. Each of us can walk away with, having learned about Juneteenth. And so I'd like to share my screen, and I'd like to just introduce the concept of Juneteenth as to the history of it, what it represented. And then I'd like to wrap it up with a metaphor of what it really represents to us. And as I've heard Dr. Reddick say, the identification of it as a federal holiday is a symbol. I appreciate the symbol, but we need far more than just symbols. We need to put in action a way that we can understand beyond a shadow of a doubt that America, if it's to fulfill its destiny, it has to be for, by, and of the people, all the people, and it has to represent all of the people. And Juneteenth is a day for all of us, no matter what our cultural background is, no matter what our religious background is. Juneteenth is a very interesting day for what it symbolically represents. And basically what it represents is for each of us to come to realize you don't need a holiday, and you don't need a piece of paper for you to be free. You were born free. You were given the pursuit of life, and you were given the pursuit of liberty and the pursuit of happiness. No law can give you that. So it's up to us to make this happen. I'd like to just share the screen and take you through the importance of Juneteenth Day. Juneteenth is officially celebrated on June 19th. The name is a blending of the words June and 19th. The day is also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day. Juneteenth holiday celebrates the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States generally, and Galveston Island specifically, which is off the coast of Texas. Galveston, Texas, originating in Galveston, Texas, Juneteenth is now celebrated annually on June 19th throughout the United States with varying official recognition. It is commemorated on the anniversary date of the June 19th, 1865 announcement by the Union Army General Gordon Granger proclaiming freedom from slavery in Texas. As teacher, we gotta do our geography piece to recognize Texas, where Texas is located, and then the island of Galveston, because that's what's important to understand about the fact that Galveston was an island. And even though the Emancipation Proclamation, so-called, that was signed 1863, freed African peoples, many of the enslaved individuals and many of the enslavers, they did not allow the Africans to know that they were free. And so for 2 years, many Africans continued as enslaved, but didn't realize that they were free. To take it closer to Galveston Island, off the coast of Texas, this is where General Gordon would come. Here is the document. This is the general order signed on June 19th, 1865. That's what concretized the date. It's the date that it was signed by General Granger. But let's take a closer look so that you can see the important aspects of this document. Here you have the place, Texas. You have the date, June 19th, and then you have the recognition of General Granger on the document. This is the document that was signed that made this day the day that Africans would be free in general. But keep in mind, they were free from the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. But many Africans continued to be enslaved up until this date, legally, that is. The Emancipation Proclamation signed by President Abraham Lincoln officially outlawed slavery in Texas and the other states in rebellion against the Union almost 2.5 years earlier. Enforcement of the proclamation generally relied on the advance of Union troops. In other words, as Union troops would travel, particularly from north to south or wherever, they would free the Africans. And it wasn't until this date on June 19th, 1865, that they would reach the island of Galveston off the coast of Texas. Texas, being the most remote of the slave states, had a low presence of Union troops as the American Civil War ended. Thus, enforcement there had been slow and inconsistent before Granger's announcement. The 13th Amendment, although Juneteenth generally celebrates the end of slavery in the United States, it was still legal and practiced in 2 Union border states, Delaware and Kentucky, until later that year when ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished chattel slavery nationwide in December. To give you some views of the celebration, here, Emancipation Day, June 19th, 1900. Emancipation Day in Richmond, Virginia, June 19th, 1905. I show this to you to imagine, here we are, June of 2021, and we are celebrating in the same vein that those that celebrated here in Richmond, Virginia celebrated. This is where we are now. This is a continuation. They called it Emancipation Day. And then finally, celebrations date to 1866, at first involving church-centered community gatherings in Texas. It spread across the South and became more commercialized in the 1920s and 1930s, often centering on a food festival. During the civil rights movement of the 1960s, it was eclipsed by the struggle for post-war civil rights, but grew in popularity again in the 1970s with a focus on African-American freedom and arts. By the 21st century, Juneteenth was celebrated in most major cities across the United States. And activists are campaigning for the United States Congress to recognize Juneteenth as a national holiday. So with that in mind, I'm going to end this particular part of the presentation. And it's the end of the Juneteenth celebration, but the beginning of the federal holiday called Juneteenth Day, which tells us, family, that it ain't over till we win. And each and every one of us has to do our part to make it happen. And to bring all of this together, just to round this out, when I think of Juneteenth Day and I think of the role of the African-American community in the United States, when I think of the role of women in the United States, when I think of the LGBTQ community in America, when I think of the Muslim community, when I think of our brothers and sisters south of the border, because what's so interesting about what is happening in south of the border, brothers and sisters from Central and South America and Mexico, is the fact that they were the original people that were here before they were pushed south, before the formation of the United States. So it's according to who you talk to, who an illegal alien is. And it's important that we understand that we all are part of this. The peoples of California, the people of Spanish-speaking background, it's important to remember that the first language here before English was Spanish from Spain. So we all have a role in Juneteenth Day. And I think of the Wizard of Oz. I think of the Wizard of Oz in a sense, in the metaphor, when I think of Juneteenth Day. Because the story I got from E. Frank Baum in his writing of the Wizard of Oz is that Dorothy got lost and she didn't quite know where she was. And all her road to return home, she met a scarecrow. And the scarecrow wanted a brain. She met the Tin Man. And the Tin Man wanted a heart. And she met a lion. And all he wanted was courage. And Dorothy wanted to go home. So they searched for the Wiz, because they said that the Wiz could solve people's problems and meet people's needs. And so in their search for the Wiz, they finally found him. Long story short, I think you've seen it. Come to realize, the scarecrow came to realize that he always had a brain. The Tin Man came to realize that he always had a heart, and the lion came to realize that he always had courage. And all Dorothy had to do to go home was to click her heels 3 times and say, I want to go home. So the story that I look at in Juneteenth Day, African peoples here, and all those who belong to groups that have been put into groups, isms that create schisms, we were born free. No one needed to free us. We just had to come to realize that we were free all along. All we had to do was to realize it. And we don't need somebody to tell us that we're free. We don't need anyone to tell us that we need a law. And I have to say that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, while they seem to have been against each other, they actually were very much with each other, but one looked for human rights and one looked for civil rights. And it was Malcolm's belief that if human rights were adopted, you wouldn't need civil rights. The fact that women need an ERA amendment means that you fundamentally are not free. The fact that you need a civil rights bill fundamentally means that you have no right to vote. And when indigenous people read their revised version of their law known as Kaya Nerekawa, the great law of peace, they said this will never work. You're enslaving part of your population and you have no respect for the women. There's no way that you can move forward with your agenda as a constitution, because this document is not written for, of, and by the people. It's only for, of, and by a particular group of people, which basically were white males, European males. And so as we celebrate Juneteenth Day today and we understand where we're coming from, we have work to do. Dr. King was right. We have difficult days ahead. We've had difficult days in the past. And something I heard Juan Carlos say in the beginning is that I look at history in school, being in school, and I see my role, particularly as someone involved in cultural education. I see it like a slingshot. And you put an object in the sling and pull it back. And the further you pull it back, the further in front of you, you are going to propel the object. We have to know our history and our culture and how things happened. And so if I could take the mind of a child, of a person, and put it in a slingshot and pull it back, what I know is the further back I go in history, the further I can propel you into your future. And so as Juan Carlos said, when you know what happened in the past, you can interpret what's happening in the present, and you can propel yourself into the future. And that's what we have to do for ourselves and for our children. And from an African perspective, one of the things I've studied in studying African cultures and the diasporian African cultures, be they in Central South America, in the Caribbean, in the United States of Canada, in Europe, places I've traveled and studied, the one thing I realize is that every society, the working society, the adults of the population, it is their obligation to make the society better for the children that will follow, not like them. Our job is not to make our children like us. Our job is to make them better than us so that they can sit on our shoulders and see what we cannot see. And they can accomplish what we have not accomplished. But the society must always be moving forward. But we have to have the courage and the ability to stand for that. And Juneteenth represents that. Juneteenth represents a day that people came to realize, I am free. And we have to continue this, and we have to continue to talk to our children because they're our future. And we have to look at this and understand. Finally, may I say, don't believe a word I say. My job as an educator is not to make you believe me. A job of an educator is to make us think. And out of that thought, become action-oriented and to see where we are in all of this. So I thank you, Juan Carlos, and to Dr. Hall, and to all of the staff of Westchester Community College for this great opportunity to celebrate this great day with us. You are free. You were born free. That is a cosmic creator-given gift. And all we have to do is keep on keeping on, because it ain't over till we win. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Happy freedom. Be free. Act free. You are free.
Thank you so very much, Professor Kaba Hiwatha Kimini. We genuinely appreciate you spending your time with us, sharing words of wisdom and guidance on this call and this celebration. I also appreciate the other day I gave Professor Kaba Hiwatha Kimini a call to talk about some arrangements regarding this event and Dr. Hall. And he started coaching me on being a new father. So I appreciate you on that wisdom as well, because it is definitely a challenge, and I'm grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, all that are here, welcome to this call. I'd like to now pass on the unmuting to Don Simmons Jr. Don Simmons Jr. has created a Juneteenth resource at the college, phenomenal resource that I'd like to have him tell you a little bit about it and guide us through it, where you can locate it. Don Simmons Jr.
All right, Juan Carlos, thank you for that introduction. And thank you, Dr. Hall, of course, Juan Carlos, for inviting me to be a part of this event, Juneteenth, which is such an iconic day, and this event in itself with the remembrance of Juneteenth. So for the fact that we're all here, especially with Professor Kaba, a huge shout out to you for breaking Juneteenth down, not only from a historical perspective, but from a spiritual perspective as well. So when I worked on the Juneteenth guide last year, it was a very unique time in history because it was in the wake of George Floyd, and COVID actually illuminated a lot of the issues that we were dealing with in this country, let alone globally. So I think that as we talk about Juneteenth, as we remember Juneteenth, it has connection, it has a deep connection to the issues and the systemic problems that we're dealing with today, especially as we try to move forward with progressive social movements so we could become a better society and a better people. So Juneteenth is, the guide is much more than just breaking down what the day was, the historical context and the resources, but it also covers other issues, other themes that are related to it, and ways in which we can inform ourselves, both white people of color and indifferent, so we could just become better informed people so we can make those necessary changes to become a better society. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to share my screen. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to copy and paste the link of the Juneteenth guide in the chat so everyone has access to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to walk you through the steps on how you can manually access the guide, which is available at our library homepage at WCC. So with that being said, give me 1 second. Okay, so we are here at good old Google, the most reliable search engine. We're going to way you can access the library homepage for WCC. So the first link, Harold L. Drimmer Library, we're going to select that right there. So now we're on the library homepage. The next step is to access the research tab. And we're going to scroll down to research guides. And then you're going to go to the search engine right here, type in Juneteenth, hit search, and then the links provided will give you access to the guide. So again, this guide is essentially an introduction, or it will at first introduce anyone who's accessing the guide to not only Juneteenth, but everything that we'll be covering, or what is covered in the guide, which is systemic racism, microaggression, and then sources on how you can make a difference. So again, the first tab, Professor Kaba covered a lot of the intricacies of Juneteenth, where 1963, that was when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but in several areas, especially in the South specifically, in Texas, Galveston, Texas, there were slaves that were still enslaved. So with the resources provided, the link right here, which was written by Henry Louis Gates Jr., who was the professor of Fletcher University and the director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute. He goes into the intricacies of Juneteenth, but visually, I love this video provided by the News Outlook into Juneteenth and why it's important for not only Black history, but American history in general. Following that, of course, is followed with a citation, and following that video are online sources that are available not only through the WCC catalog, which, of course, if you want to access anything, you just need to log in with your WCC ID and password, but there are also other articles available online as well, free, that you can access. So please feel free to take a look at that if you want to learn more about Juneteenth. Now, the next tab I find to also be very, very important, because in today's socio and political climate, I'm pretty sure most everyone in this Zoom session has heard of critical race theory that has been going around in debates, especially with conservatives and liberals, and how critical race theory really looks at structural racism, systemic racism. And essentially, systemic racism, according to the Aspen Institute, is a system that allows public policies, institutional practices, cultural representations, and other social norms to perpetuate racial inequity. And it essentially discusses how race is embedded in our country through chattel slavery, through Jim Crow, and all the legislative practices that have put a social hierarchy to people of color, specifically Black people, and how that has been embedded in our country. And the effects of that is within our education system, is within other aspects of life. And the video here that was published by ACT TV, another reputable news outlet, provides a very informative video on how systemic racism, how it affects people of color, and how it affects our country and what that looks like. And then again, the following resources below will give you a better perspective of systemic racism and how it has deep ties into the framework of our country. Okay. Now, the third tab gets into microaggression. And what's interesting is that, a lot of people are familiar with microaggression, but aren't necessarily sure like the different types of microaggressions because there's so many, right? So according to Dr. Su, who is the man in microaggression, he's the professor of psychology and education in the Department of Counseling and Clinical Psychology at Teachers College and the School of Social Work at Columbia University. What an introduction, right? He is accredited. So according to him, microaggressions are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based upon their marginalized group membership, which predominantly affects women and people of color, and ergo marginalized communities. This article below is what has been published by him. It's an academic article or academic journal, and he goes into the intricacies of microaggression. And this chart kind of gives you a perspective on the different types of microaggressions. This model is just showing you racial microaggressions, but there are other versions as well. So if you want to take a look at that, please feel free. And also notice off to the left-hand side for this tab, you have more resources available in the WCC catalog. And below, I provided a video, the thumbnail, the image. Again, Jim Carrey is looking super wild, but it's an example of what a microaggression is. Again, a visual video that provides clips from movies that we love and adore, but the slight comments, the different scenes that are provided give you a real perspective of what a microaggression is, whether it's directed towards a woman, a group of women, or particularly people of color. And Dr. Su, who is also referenced in this video, breaks down why knowing more about microaggressions are important and what are the ways in which we can identify it, address it, and we can reform these microaggressions and how we can educate ourselves better in this particular topic in this field. And finally, as we scroll up, which to me personally, this is the one of the most important tabs, is how to make a difference. So again, when this guide was created, it was following George Floyd, and because COVID was very rampant, a lot of people were much more tuned in to this event, and this was a very life-changing event for many people. And anti-racism, that term started to become much more consistent in the political and social worlds. Many people are now looking for ways in which they can change a lot of these issues that we deal with today, from the issues that stem from Juneteenth, like police brutality or redlining with gentrification, all of these issues that, you know, have their own versions of their social movements. So to make the difference, to actually go out there and to, you know, create that systemic change, this guide provides resources and ways in which you can do that. So with this anti-racism resource list, the first thing I provided are the steps, the 5 ways to advocate and support social justice organizations in your local community. And this is according to NYXT, which is a news cable channel in NYC. So the first thing is just to consider your interest and what you would like to fight for, the social movements that you would like to contribute to. And in this link right here, it gives you a list of leading organizations that you might consider of, you know, either joining, contributing to, etc. The second step is, of course, educating yourself. And I like to look at this as building cultural competency. So learning more about other cultures, ethnicities, issues that are very systemic in, you know, different communities of color, different communities that are outside of your own. And even though with this list, it's specific to white people and white parents, I definitely recommend all people to kind of take a look at these resources, because it's information that will just benefit anyone. Now, this link will take you to a very, very informative guide that is very, very easy to read in terms of the list that they have. So this is specific towards anti-racism resources for white people, but I highly recommend, again, for everyone to take a look at it. Resources in terms of books, podcasts, articles to read, videos to watch, podcasts to subscribe to, and the list goes on. So again, this is very informative. I highly recommend everyone checking that out. And also reach out to legislators so you can make that local change legislatively. That is extremely important. And this this video kind of highlights the step-by-step ways to kind of, you know, go throughout voting. So this is like for the first time voter, what to do, what to look for. All right. And this is also very pivotal because, you know, of course, we're getting a lot of voter restricting bills nationally. So I think it's important to just be in the wherewithal on how to vote nationally, what is going on in terms of voting, just to keep yourself in the loop. The fourth one is to volunteer for social organizations in your local area if you are if you're trying to engage in that social movement, depending on your interest. And then finally is to donate, which is to ultimately embed yourself in the social cause that you are looking to contribute to. And the links below have social justice organizations that you can support right now. And all of these articles, all of these links are updated. So with social organizations that you see in this guide are relevant and very much active in your communities today. So again, I am extremely grateful to have worked on this guide. I am also extremely grateful to be a part of this event, remembering Juneteenth, and also being a part of recognizing it and looking forward to creating that change for a better tomorrow. I feel like is extremely pivotal. And again, Juan Carlos and Dr. Hall, thank you so much for me being a part of this event. And now I will give the floor back to Juan Carlos.
Thank you so much, Don Simmons Jr., for walking us through that very clear, well done, and powerful resource for our institution. I am grateful, honored, and blessed to work at an institution that has individuals in a community that acknowledges days such as this, but also creates spaces and puts faces to the knowledge that we are sharing forward. Our closing speaker today, our originally scheduled closing speaker, Adam Adamu, a student speaker involved with the Viking newspaper and Power 88.1 is unfortunately encountering a personal emergency at the moment. So unfortunately, we will not be hearing from Adam Adamu today. However, I will be sending the recording of today's experience to our marketing team in the department, Marco Lazzaro, so that it can be posted via social media. So you will see his closing words via social media. We do have, however, the Student Government Association president, Gabriela Corte, aka Gabby, on the call today, who has agreed to share some closing words with us as we hear wisdom, but we also receive the fire of action to move forward in the now with action, as we heard from Don Simmons Jr. So now I'd like to pass the unmuting to Gabby Corte to share a few words of closing. One moment, Gabby. We need to get the technological unmuting.
All right, thank you
There we
so
go.
much, Juan Carlos, for this opportunity. I would say that thank you all for coming to this wonderful event. It was very much needed. I personally did not know much about being Black American because I did not live here. I lived in Ghana. But I have learned so much over the years that I have been in this country, and I'm still learning too. My heroine, Harriet Tubman, has paved the way for so many people. Even though, having said that, we still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do on ourselves and on each other. And I thanks again for coming to this event. And remember that we need to hold each other and ourselves accountable for our actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby, for your words and your reminder that we still have work to do on ourselves and each other, starting with ourselves. I learned yesterday something that was very powerful. For so many years, I've looked at the cardinal directions as north, east, south, and west. And I learned yesterday that the cardinal directions are actually north, east, southwest, above, below, and within. And with that closing, I encourage us to take the knowledge that we received within and spread it above, below, north, south, east, and west, with all that are open to receiving, so that we can receive and share, receive and share, receive and share, and enter a time and place where we are treating each other always just as human. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call today. Thank you, Dr. Miles. Thank you, Dr. Rachel Hall, Dr. Renardo Reddick. Thank you, Risa Graves. Thank you, Professor Kaba Hiwatha Kamini. Thank you, Professor Don Simmons Jr. Thank you, Adam Adamu. His closing remarks are phenomenal. Please do go to our social media, either sometime this week or next week, to see it there. And thank you, Gabby Corte, Student Government Association President, for delivering closing remarks. Be well, be blessed, be safe, and be you, be true, be human, as we treat each other as human. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.